Welcome to Beyond Airtube, the official instructional series from the Ohio Media School. Whether you're dreaming of the spotlight or mastering the craft behind it, we're here to help you level up your skills. Hey everyone, welcome back. And in this tutorial, we're going to go over how to rotoscope. So let's get started. In this example, what I ended up doing was I did a key light in Adobe After Effects to create this silhouette. However, I'm going to show you how to do the exact same thing just using rotoscope. So let's get started. Now, in this particular case, I've already brought my footage into After Effects, but for argument's sake, let's start from the beginning. There we go. I'm going to figure out where I actually left this because it's been a while since I worked on this project. Reveal and Explorer. Let's drag it. Bring it into Adobe Premiere. Now I'm going to go to a sequence that I have that's already formatted. First thing I'm going to do, once I brought my project into my sequence, I'm going to do a little bit of pre-editing. I'm then going to right-click, replace with Adobe After Effects composition. In this case, because I already had this file open, it's just going to bring it right in. I'm going to ignore the color setting warning for right now, because that was not the purpose of this video. So, in my original project, I did this with just a key light effect, and then a bit of a mask. So, what we're going to go in here and do is rotoscope. So, my recommendation for rotoscoping, start with a part of the frame where everything you want in shot is going to be there. Because you can always propagate backwards. Start with a point in the shot where everything is in focus, because you can always propagate, which is its version of thinking and sort of pre-rendering the data, or probably what I would call baking the data, because until you go to that frame, it hasn't really thought about what it needs to do to roto that frame. You can go and click rotoscope up here, or my preferred method, Alt-W. The thing you're going to notice is nothing happens. That's because if you're in your composition tab, you're going to need to double click and go into your layer tab, and you're going to see you now have a green circle with a crosshair. So I'm going to go over a few useful tips and tricks. So with rotoscoping, like any effect, if you go in once you open it, so right now we have no effect tab. If I left click and it is complaining about me, this will happen. This is actually a really great thing to have happen. So if your footage is the wrong frame rate, and I just couldn't remember what composition this was in off the top of my head, so I'm going to go in, I'm going to change it. 939. That's basically the same. I don't know why it's complaining, but if it is complaining, it will let you know. Now to actually use the Roto Brush, if you just left click, you're going to add. If you hold down Alt and click, you will then subtract. You'll see here in a moment how I use both to create our mask. And now, as you've noticed where I've left clicked, it's gone in and it's created this purple boundary. So all your various alpha overlays are down here. So we can do just a simple flat color by toggling the overlay. The boundary just shows this. This is kind of my preferred. I'm just used to working with it. When I first started learning how to do it, I didn't really notice any of the other ones, so this was like my favorite. And this one's also useful if you just want to see a shape, and this is kind of what inspired the silhouette effect, at least for me. So we're going to go in. We're just going to go and define. You can left click and drag. Doesn't really matter, just kind of depends on what you're doing. Hold spacebar to open up the hand tool and then drag, and I'm using the third mouse wheel to zoom in and out. So right now I'm just going in, I'm just grabbing our shapes. I'm clicking too aggressively and it's complaining at me. Now, for those of you now thinking, am I going to have to do this for every frame? No. And as I just messed up and hit spacebar and hit play, you'll see. So I recommend with rotoscoping, start with one frame, and if you mess up and go off that frame, go into your rotoscope go down to strokes, click the caret, and then you can go back to the frame that you were on initially. The reason for this is going to be the first frame that it's going to process all the rest from. So if you do this one right, it's going to make everything else super easy. Now here's a great example of where you'll want to use the subtraction tool. So right now I've just been left clicking. So now that I have this big chunk of green that I don't want, I'm probably going to end up sacrificing having to do it for all the wires just because it's going to get very fiddly. And that's one of the limitations of rotoscoping is it can get very time consuming. Since this is static, it might not be that bad, and we'll do it for the example, but if I was under a time constraint, I'd probably just subtract this area, leave that boundary, and then apply a key light at the very end. Alrighty, so a little too big, so I'm going to hold Control, drag left to shrink, drag right to expand, but right now I want to make that kind of small. I want to go and pick up some of this detail. Now, with rotoscoping, what you're looking for is color contrast. If you have, say, a black shirt on a black background, or if Ben here was wearing Control Z, was wearing like a green shirt, this would not work that well. It really does need kind of high color density. Otherwise, you're going to be here, and it almost turns into an exercise in just masking at that point. Another limitation with rotoscoping I find it's better at organic shapes. It doesn't necessarily do hard corners well. Like sometimes it can, sometimes it doesn't. I've had more success with more organic shapes, probably because it's less noticeable if there's something off. Subtract from there. And now you can kind of see where rotoscoping can get a little bit fiddly. And now here's a great place to just play with our alpha boundary. Because this is the ultimate look that I want to go for. And I've noticed over here, it's some of his shoulder. Maybe define the nose better. Missing some of the curly Q of the hair. We are in no way sponsoring Rode unless you guys want to send us some microphones. We're our media school, and I do like that little microphone I have. So hit me up. And I think for the sake of this tutorial, we're good enough. I could get a little bit more obsessive over this, but for now, I'm pretty happy. So let me show you the fun of rotoscope, and also the areas that can potentially really bog down your workflow. So you might think to yourself, wow, that was pretty quick. And I showed that to you more or less in real time. So I'm going to go to my time marker, and I'm going to drag it to the left a few frames. So you'll see this thing, Roto Brush propagating. What that means is it's brain thinking. So I only went a few frames and it was pretty quick. So watch what happens though when I go several seconds. And this is where rotoscoping can start to be a little bit unwieldy in terms of your time. And now what I'm hoping to have happen here is I'm hoping this breaks. I'm hoping there's something that I need to fix. Rotoscoping has gotten better. I believe we are on version 3. And, you know, from earlier versions about a decade ago, it has markedly improved. And as you can see, this is where it's going to really start to slow down your workflow with rotoscoping. And it's something that should be in mind if you're trying to keep a tight deadline. Now that did pretty good. So I'm going to hit play. And this rotoscope worked really well. And the one area that can really start to bog you down is if things get messed up. So for instance, typically I was expecting the hands to mess up and I was expecting to have to go into this frame and make some adjustments. But this is one of the, here, I think I saw something I can use as an example. So I'm going to scrub through here. So for example, so this even isn't that bad, but this would be a good example of where I might want to go in and just clean that up a bit. And what's nice about rotoscoping is that's really not going to impact anything else. Rotoscoping, from everything I've experienced, it reads from the bottom of your info first. So all of these are going to go first, and then everything over top of that is going to just refine your matte. Fit. And that worked really well, and I'm really happy with it. So, got lucky. I might have to find one that's going to fight me more for a more in-depth tutorial later on. So, let's go back to our composition, and boom, we see we've cut out everything. Now, obviously I said I wanted to go in and use key light just to remove some of this green that I wasn't really happy about. Just going to drag it, drop it. Honestly, that keyed really well with very little work, and I'm jelly. I'm just going to go in and refine this real quick. This is not a green screen tutorial. I would be happy to do one later on. Alrighty, that keyed really well. I'll take it. Now, I'm going to show you a few things over here, ignoring key light. So, you can go into your effect tab over here, or for me, down here, doesn't really matter. I'm going to use this guy just because it's a little bit closer. So, one of the first useful things is inverting the foreground or background. Now, because I have the key light on, you're not really getting the full effect of what I just did. But this is essentially what I wanted to do for my effect. But obviously, I just had it cut in at a certain point. So that's pretty cool. And honestly, I kind of like that effect. I even don't mind some of the thicker rotoscope in there. And now you can see some of the issues with rotoscoping, and this is something you might want to go in and refine, is you can see it kind of jumping there a little bit. And that is something I would definitely want to go in and clean up for a final pass. You could also feather your rotoscope. And as you can see, that creates more of a soft boundary. You can also increase the contrast, which will sharpen the edge because it's contrasting the colors. You can also shift the edge either direction. So if I wanted to make like, if you've ever seen those like British puppet cutout things. Oop, wrong direction. You know, if you wanted to have something have like an obvious background for whatever reason, I'm going to undo that just because I kind of liked what it was looking like. And then finally, you can reduce chatter, which is going to simplify, but in some cases, it's useful for decreasing some of the warbles that you get around a rotoscope. Again, it's not necessarily a magic bullet. It's better to go in and refine your rotoscope. Something I find useful more than anything is actually going in and adding a motion blur. If you have fast-paced motion, it's not really going to do anything on this guy, so I'm not really going to bother turning it on, but it can often help if you have motion blur in camera or if you're shooting at a low shutter speed. And for argument's sake, I'm going to go back to showing it kind of the way I wanted it to be seen. And the last thing I'm going to show you is how to freeze your rotoscope. So once you're pretty much happy with it, I recommend going to your Roto Brush here under your little drop-down menu, and then hit freeze. And what freeze is going to do is it's going to make it so it's going to basically bake your propagation. And that way you're not going to have to worry about it thinking every time you move it. So when you're finally happy with a rotoscope, I recommend doing this. And I also recommend, especially starting out, don't try to rotoscope them more than a few seconds at a time. Especially if you don't have a really powerful BC. I've seen this happen with some of my students where they get into a rotoscoping project and it ends up just consuming way more time than it's worth. I think with media, it's always very important to keep in mind time to effort ratio. And if there's an easier way to do something, do it the easier way. I'm going to fast forward through the rest of freezing this just so you don't have to sit here for the full... It took my computer about 10 minutes, and if anyone's interested for the specs, I can leave that in a separate video just so you can do a performance benchmark. And there we go. Now it's finished, and it's just going to play a lot smoother. Now you see I don't have that evil propagation kicking in. I've gone too aggressive with it. Boom, iPhone commercial. And there you go. I just put the teal solid in the background, for example, but you could put anything back there, a beach, an office party, really anything you want. I will say for precision, it is better to blue or green screen, but rotoscoping can be great, especially if you just need to take out an object in frame, or if it's going to work for the style of your project. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. Tune in next time for more.